He dares to vanish, to humiliate me, in silence.
Welcome, dear listener, to African Tales by Nina. Tonight's tale is not what it seems. A wealthy heir, a simple village girl, and a secret that could break two hearts or bind them forever. Gather close for a story of disguise, of destiny, and the love that defied all titles. In the land of Abonji, where the golden sun kissed the palace roofs, lived a prince named Aday, a man born into wealth, burdened with expectation. He was the only son of King Idowu and Queen Olayemi, a bright child, raised among books, warriors, and whispered expectations. His tutors praised his wisdom, his soldiers saluted his presence, and his people whispered stories of his kindness. But within the shimmering halls of the palace, his future was being bartered. The royal council, led by the rigid High Minister Olanrewaju, had declared his match, Lady Zena, daughter of a wealthy warlord from the eastern provinces. Zena was famed for her beauty, educated in the finest courts, praised by every noble. But Aday had observed her closely. Her laugh was practiced, her gaze piercing and cold. He'd seen how servants trembled under her command, and how she once pushed a crying child aside for dirtying her hem. "You must marry Lady Zena," Olanrewaju had said, his tone unyielding. "She is elegance, nobility, perfection." But what is perfection without kindness? What is elegance without compassion? That evening, after yet another royal banquet, where Zena recited poetry about herself, Aday retreated to the private garden of his grandmother, Queen Mother Ife. The moonlight danced on her silver braids as she sat, weaving dried herbs into a charm. "Grandmother," Aday began softly, "how did you find love? Real love, not arranged, not political, just love." She chuckled, her eyes glinting. "I once disguised myself as a palace maid, scrubbed the halls, served tea, all to see who would notice more than my beauty. Your grandfather did. He offered me bread when I had none, and called me queen before he knew my title." Aday leaned closer, inspired by her tale. And that night, as music echoed from the palace halls, he made a vow to follow truth, not tradition. Aday summoned Obi. Under the cover of darkness, Obi, the palace guard turned confidant, was more brother than servant. Together they studied old maps and uncovered the ancient servant tunnels built before the palace ever knew golden gates. And there, beneath candlelight and whispers, they crafted a new identity, a traveling merchant named Kojo. Aday whispered with a grin, "What if the future king vanishes in rags and returns in truth?" Obi grinning, "Then the tale shall echo for generations." They gathered herbs, oils, and soap molds from the royal perfumery. Aday's hands, once trained in swordplay, now molded soap, scented with lavender and shea. And at dawn, he shed his royal garb, earth-toned linen, sandals worn by time, a hood to shade his face, with Obi at his side and a wooden car creaking behind. They passed through the servants' gate, unnoticed. Behind them, the palace tower rose into the sky, glowing in gold. But ahead, the red soil path stretched forward, toward the unknown. The village of Ayo welcomed the morning sun with drums and song. Roosters crowed in harmony with pounding fufu and the sizzle of akara oil on hot stone. At the center of it all stood Amara, daughter of the late herbalist, Master Ladi. She stirred oils in a clay bowl, her fingers moving with memory, and with each blend, she whispered a blessing. Her stall sat in the heart of the market square, wrapped in hand-painted fabrics, lined with wooden signs, Moon's Kiss, River Memory, Fireleaf. Then he arrived, Kojo, merchant by disguise, prince by birth. He stepped into the square during peak trade, nearly flattened by a woman balancing bananas on her head and a goat tugging at his robe. He fumbled, dropped a basket, and landed right at Amara's feet. The goat bleated triumphantly. Laughter erupted around them, but Amara didn't laugh. She crouched beside him and offered her hand. Her eyes were amused, not mocking. You're not from here, she said softly. Kojo chuckled, brushing dust from his knees. And how could you tell? She nodded at his feet. Only a stranger wears silk slippers in market mud. She offered him a hand and a gourd of cool water, then turned slightly as two small faces peeked from behind her. This is Aday, age 10, observant, poetic, and Bahyo, 6 years old, loud and always hungry. The boy grinned. The girl just stared, as if reading Kojo's soul. Mahra pointed to the empty stall beside hers. You can use that space, she said, but the village rule is simple. You must barter a story before sundown. Kojo blinked. A story? She smiled. Yes, we trade tales here, as much as we trade coins. Kojo stood there, heart stirred. His journey had brought him far, but his story was just beginning. Kojo, once a prince with polished fingers, now bruised herbs with a wooden pestle. Amara taught him to identify lavender by scent, not sight, and to greet elders with both hands. He swept the market stall. He helped cook dinner. He laughed when Bayo dumped flour on his head and listened intently when Sad recited stories from memory. In these quiet moments, Aday found something royal could never teach: humility. At night, beneath a sky full of stars, he and Amara would sit beside the stream. You speak like someone who's read too many books, she teased. Or not enough, he replied, watching the fireflies glow. He told her half-truths, that he once lived near a palace, that his mother taught him herbs. She told him about her father's death during the fever outbreak and how she took up his trade to care for her siblings. Their hands brushed. Once, neither pulled away. They never said, I love you. But every gesture whispered it, louder. Meanwhile, in the grand estate of Lady Zena, trouble brewed like storm clouds over the horizon. She stood before a floor-length obsidian mirror, her silken robes cascading like fire around her, yet no reflection could hide the fury in her heart.
He dares to vanish, to humiliate me in silence.
She moved closer to the obsidian mirror, but no reflection could hide the fire in her eyes. With one sharp sweep, perfume bottles shattered, a cascade of scent and glass. Her maid said nothing. Even fear held its breath. Her father, Lord O'Hare, had warned her once. Power without restraint becomes poison. But Zena only remembered what she lost. Then came the whisper from a pale-eyed trader, cloaked in dust, his voice barely a breath.
He's been seen in a village called Aday, selling soap beside a barefoot girl.
Ayo! She spat the name, like it left a bitter taste on her tongue.
A town of nobodies. Then let them remember my name.
A village beneath her titles, but now the center of her fury. She turned sharply, summoned her guards, men who owed her favors, not the crown. Before she left, she stood once more before her mirror, but it no longer reflected power, only a woman, undone, pride cracked, fury rising.
Let's go break their hearts. Mine already bleeds.
She swept through her chambers, the heavy fabric of her robe trailing like fire. Outside, her guards stood ready, but none could see the storm that walked beside her.
Ride to Ayo. I ride at dawn. Prepare my golden sash. If they want a drama, I will deliver it.
And so she rode, not for love, but for vengeance, draped in silk and sharpened by pride. Every year, the village of Ayo hosted the Moonflower Festival. A celebration of harvest, ancestors, and unexpected blessings. Stalls bloomed with color, music flowed like honey, and the air was thick with spice and laughter. Amara, dressed in a wrap dyed deep indigo, a tribute to her mother. Kojo wore a simple brown tunic with woven beads. They walked together, side by side, not hand in hand, but close enough that the wind between them told stories. Children painted their faces with clay symbols. Elders told tales beneath the wisdom tree. Lovers braided each other's hair as music echoed through woven drums. Amara handed Kojo a flower carved from soap.
For good luck.
Their eyes held. Then, silence. The festival crowd turned. A golden carriage rolled into the square, drawn by white horses, flanked by armored guards in velvet blue. From within, she stepped. Lady Zena, dressed in crimson silk, her crown glinting, her gaze scanning the crowd like a hawk. Amara's smile faded. Kojo, Aday, stood frozen.
There you are, the prince who plays peasant, the noble who sells soap.
Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amara turned slowly to Kojo.
Prince.
He stepped toward her, eyes wide, hands open.
Amara, I can explain.
No, you already did, without words.
He belongs to me, not you. This was a game, and it ends now.
Amara turned. Her siblings clung to her skirts. The flower soap fell from her hand. She walked away, not running. Each step etched into the dirt like heartbreak.
Your Highness, we leave at once.
But Aday did not move. Some mornings begin in silence, not because the world is still, but because something inside us no longer stirs. Amara had not spoken since the festival. She had not cried, nor eaten. Her mother begged, her neighbors knocked, but heartbreak answers to no one. And Aday returned to the palace, not as a prince, but as a man who had tasted freedom and lost it. Gold held no beauty now. The echo of his fiancée's laughter in court rang hollow, and every polished floor reminded him he had betrayed a trust that could not be bought back. She had loved him, not for his name, but for his heart, and he had given her a mask instead of truth. Sometimes, the wisest women say nothing. They sit beside the storm and wait for the thunder to speak first. The grandmother reached out and gently placed her hand over Amara's trembling fingers. For a moment, Amara flinched, her body tense, her eyes distant. But then something softened. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. A single tear rolled down her cheek. That was the first tear. It would not be the last. But tears, they are the water that heal broken ground. Night has fallen. Aday sits beneath the same tree where he once played as a boy. He pulls out a folded note, the one Amara wrote him before the festival. He reads, "To the man who showed me kindness, even if only for a season, thank you." He closes his eyes, and the wind stirs the leaves. He had everything, yet it meant nothing if she could not share it. But love, like the moon, waxes and wanes, and he was not ready to let it set. The heart, though broken, still beats, and somewhere in the silence, hope begins again. Truth is a river. You can dam it, redirect it, disguise it, but in time, it always finds its way through. Prince Aday now stood before their very power. He was born to inherit, but with a heart he never imagined he would have to defend.
You abandoned your duties. You embarrassed the house of Olanma before nobles and elders alike. And for what?
For the truth, for love, for a life where I am seen, not just as a prince, but as a man.
Spoken like a man, blinded by dust and soap oil. A market girl cannot be a queen.
But Aday did not flinch. For once, he felt taller than his crown.
Then perhaps this crown is not yours to chase.
The village had changed too. Where once there was pride, now there was pity. Eyes that once saw a queen in the making now saw only gossip.
My child, listen. A bird does not forget how to fly, because the wind is harsh. You were light before he came. Be light still.
And in that moment, something inside Amara did not break. It awakened. In different corners of the world, two hearts burned quietly, but neither flame had gone out.
I hope she still believes in me.
The heart, once tested, does not break. It remembers, and it waits for the truth to return. The weight of a broken heart is heavy, but the weight of a love unfinished is heavier still. Prince Aday came to the village not with guts or gifts, but with silence and eyes full of the words he never said. He had walked the road once as a stranger. Now he returned with every eye watching him, but the only eyes he searched for were hers.
I came here once, hoping to find myself, and instead, I found you. You taught me things no palace ever could, but I gave you shadows instead of truth. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to listen.
Is that what kings do? Apologize when everyone's watching.
Her words did not shout, but they landed like thunder.
No, this is what men do when they realize they've broken something they were never worthy to hold. I loved you as a merchant. I love you more as a man who failed you.
There were no cheers, no gasps, just wind and silence, and a woman's heart that had not yet decided. Redemption does not always arrive in thunder. Sometimes it stands quietly, waiting until the heart is ready to open again. There are moments when the heart must be placed before a throne and let the world decide whether it was ever worthy of a crown. In the Hall of Ancestors, Prince Aday stood not as a prince, but as a man defending love.
I speak not just as a prince, but as a man who has learned love.
This house has endured for generations. We have crushed rebellions, ended famines, and ruled with fire and fairness. But today we judge something far more dangerous, the condition of a heart.
Your Majesty, I was humiliated, betrayed. Your son cast away duty for a soap vendor. This girl is a distraction, a scheme, a stain on royal blood.
Judge me, not by title, but by truth. She never wanted royalty. She wanted honesty. I came to her with no name, and still, she gave me her heart. She loved me before my name ever passed her lips. And if that makes her unworthy of this house, then perhaps this house is unworthy of her.
The court whispered. Eyes darted between tradition and truth.
Enough. Bring forth the final testimony.
Your Majesty, forgive my silence, but I saw the truth. Lady Zena sent riders to the village. She forged letters, paid merchants to mock the girl in public. She did not lose the prince. She tried to erase the woman who found his heart.
The court fell silent. Even the air stood still.
She's lying. A maid's word against a noble.
The storm had arrived, not in thunder, but in truth.
Enough. It is said, he who silences the wind only invites the storm. Today, we have heard the wind, and the storm has spoken.
In the stillness of the great court, time itself held its breath. The truth had echoed louder than fear, louder than tradition. Now, all eyes turned toward the throne, awaiting a verdict, not only for one woman, but for a kingdom's soul. Would the crown cling to silence, or rise to honor the storm that shattered its peace?
From this day forward, Lady Zena is stripped of her title. She shall leave this court by nightfall, and should she ever speak the name Amara again, it will be the last word she speaks within my kingdom.
No thunder rolled, no swords were raised, but a kingdom shifted and history took its breath.
She is not here, yet her truth echoes louder than any crown. We judged her wrongly, and though she owes this court nothing, this kingdom now owes her everything. If her heart is still willing, we shall honor her, not just in name, but in legacy.
Justice had spoken, but love still waited, not in thrones, not in titles, but in the quiet space between two hearts, learning to trust again. Not every warrior fights with a blade. Some battles are fought in silence, in moments when no one is watching, when the heart, tired of shouting, begins to whisper its truth.
I was once like you, Aday, young, in love, and terrified.
And what did you choose?
I chose, but I chose too late. By the time I returned, the one I loved belonged to another.
Then I will not delay. If I must walk away from the crown, I will. But I will not walk away from her.
Some crowns are not worn on the head, but in the courage it takes to choose love over legacy. By the river, where stories once began, Amara stands, watching the water. In her hand, the necklace, restored, glimmering like a promise. Behind her, her grandmother, silent, present. The wind carries no words, only memory.
You don't have to go, but if you don't, you'll never know what kind of queen you already are. I don't want to be a queen. I just want to know. He meant it. Then let him show you, not in gold, but in steps, in waiting.
Sometimes the heart doesn't need words. It only needs the courage to be still long enough to be seen.
I left the crown behind, not for you, but for me. because I couldn't live a life built on anything less than truth. But I hope that truth might still include you.
You left the crown. I left my fear. Maybe that's enough to begin again.
Some love begins in storms and survives in quiet. And when truth is chosen over pride, love does not ask for permission. It simply begins again. Some stories end with thunder, but others close like firelight, soft, glowing, and alive long after the flame dies.
Two hearts met in shadow and chose to love in light. May your home be like the roots of the baobab tree, deep, quiet, and everlasting.
Ashe.
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 May laughter dance through your doorways and outlive sorrow. May kindness weave through your walls. May you always remember that truth is stronger than gold, and love is the crown that never fades.
Ashe.
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 This union is sealed, not by titles, but by the courage of your hearts. May Olodumare smile upon you.
Ashe.
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 There were no crowns, no titles, just hands held and hearts finally mended. He had chosen love. She had chosen forgiveness. And the kingdom had finally learned to see value where gold could not measure. And so, one woman's grace broke through generations of silence and planted a seed for a gentler crown. And so, the merchant prince and the market girl reminded us that love does not ask for riches, only truth. Now, I ask you, dear listener, what would you have done in Amara's place? Would you choose pride or open your heart once more? Tell me in the comments below. And if this tale stirred your soul, like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next firelight.
Unified African percussion. Adonya, Aomba Dupet Angwano tempo, mid-tempo groove. Too many trials, too many mountains, but you guide me through all of the pain. Your mercy cover me like an endless river stream.